we're now joined by Randy Pratt from the Lizards. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Jay?
Oh, doing fantastic. Thanks so much for checking in. I know you got some great new music out and new single. But if we could go back, I'd love to hear about how you got started in music. You know, at what age did you start playing, and you know, what were some of the biggest, bands or artists that really influenced you to want to do this?
I guess my whole life started with the Beatles. You know, on the cover of Life magazine and the Ed Sullivan Show. Kind of all my chemistry shifted at that point, and I knew I would be no good for anything else after that. so that was when I started.
You definitely changed the world. I swear they must have sold a million guitars and drums after the Ed Sullivan Show.
It gave us some new haircuts and everything.
Yeah, it was an exciting time, definitely. So you grew up in Long Island?
I moved around a little bit.
Okay.
I was born in South Carolina. I grew up mainly in Long Island, though.
And at what age did you start playing, and
I kind of
bands?
I was always poking around on it. I took piano lessons, and I had some little bands in high school and stuff. But I really got serious. I think during like 1980, I moved into Manhattan, and during the New Wave, when Manhattan was once again kind of the center of the universe during the New Wave and period, and I was right in there during all that, and that's kind of when I really dug in and started to take it seriously.
Sure. Well, exciting thing.
And I definitely stood out by with a big hairdo before the Motley Crue thing came and everything. So I was kind of not cool. I was doing classic rock kind of thing while the punk thing was happening, but that's what it felt right.
Yeah, well, you got to go with what you love, and certainly music continues to evolve, but there's always great elements of all these different hybrids of genres and eras and cultures, and we always love to see musicians that kind of mix it up and certainly stay true to what's in their heart rather than jumping on the trends.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about the evolution of the Lizards. Now, how did all you guys get together, and what was your common areas?
I was doing a progressive rock band called Star People, but I wanted to do something real more basic and classic heavy rock, and my engineer was jamming with me one time, and Pat Klein, and I just said, "Oh, this guy's perfect." And I had just met the original singer from Solar Baltimore, John Garner. Solar Baltimore was actually the first band that the press ever attached the word heavy metal to, and I loved him as a kid. And this guy has this, it sounded like Glenn Hughes an Italian Glenn Hughes from Brooklyn is what his voice sounded like. I don't know if you're familiar with the band, very operatic and exaggerated vibrato. And so we based the band kind of almost around his voice, and we did 2 albums and a live album and a couple of DVDs with him touring around, and he didn't want to tour as much as we did. So at that point, we picked up Bobby Rondinelli on drums. Bobby was doing a solo album with Mark Stein from the Vanilla Fudge at my studio, and I played him our stuff because our drummer had left, and he jumped right in. And he knew a singer named Mike DeMeo, who had briefly been being nurtured by Ritchie Blackmore to be in Deep Purple, but then the record company insisted they use Ian Gillan, so that shows you the quality that he was at as a young guy.
Right.
And we had a tour booked and everything with John Garner, and an album finished almost, and Mike came in and just quickly nailed it all out, and we went right out on tour with him, and that's the guy we stayed with for a longer period of time. We were touring pretty steadily and putting records out every year, and I had a really bad car accident in 2006 and broke my 2 middle fingers on my right hand, my plucking hand, which were my main fingers, so I didn't know if I'd be able to play again, and the band kind of scattered a little bit, and as I recovered, I didn't know if I'd play, but when I got better, Mike was already out on tour with this band, Master Plan, and we recorded the new album with a different keyboard player, Scott the Doctor Tribitz, who's awesome. I played with him before. He can play any style. He's amazing. And we wrote the songs with him, and they have a slightly different flavor, I think partly because of that and partly because we were doing it without Mike there. So this album has a little darker feel than the other ones, I think. But Mike came back and we finished this record, and the band wasn't really together at that point. We all were doing other things, but we just kept coming back and said, "Well, that album would really be nice to put out." So over the last 9 years, we just kind of kept tweaking it and got all these guest appearances from Frank Marino and Vinnie Moore and Glenn Hughes, and just kind of built it up, and there it was, finished in Carmine Appice. I'm in a band called Cactus with Carmine Appice, and he asked me if we could put it out, so we did. And, that's where we stand right now. The band all lives in the same area, so we're kind of saying, oh, maybe we should gig or something, So it's kind of just waiting to see what kind of reaction we get on this.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. So, how did some of those guest appearances come through?
Those were guys we had toured with.
Okay.
We toured with Glenn. We toured with UFO a couple of times in Europe and in America. We did about a 2-month tour with Glenn Hughes in Europe.
And Frank Marino, you did shows with?
Frank Marino was our first tour, actually. He's a great guy. I loved him as a kid, too. I don't want to say he's obscure, but I don't think he gets the credit he deserves.
Well, a lot of those guys are under the shadow of Hendrix. Robin Trower.
You know what? Do you remember, Robin Trower and Frank Marino came out, and the press kind of slammed him, like, oh, this is ripping Hendrix off.
Yeah, well, I remember when Aerosmith first came out, and they said, oh, these guys are a Mick Jagger and Keith Richards.
I know, but then Stevie Ray Vaughan came out in the 80s, and it's like, he's a genius. And he even dressed like Hendrix, and I go, it's just the time you come out. They were too soon, I guess, as the expression goes, I mean, it's just when they just came out too soon after Hendrix, I guess.
Yeah, well, I worked with U2 in the 80s, and I remember so many bands were under the shadow of U2. If you sounded anywhere near that, they acted like you were, a ripoff.
Uh-huh.
It's pretty crazy. Yeah, critics. It's I consider myself basically someone who helps expose great music, but these critics that hide behind, their opinions so much.
Yeah.
Who cares? Who are you?
Right.
It's really about new music discovery and going with what you love. I mean, so much of my problem with radio and a lot of mainstream press is they cover so little of what's out there and what's great.
I know.
And I think it's the duty of all of us to turn each other on to, what we're passionate about.
It seems
and let
like,
other people make their choice. It's just this kind of sheep mentality where everybody follows, one thing.
I don't know how old you are, but when we were kids, I don't think it ever crossed my mind that how old a band was. I mean, we loved Muddy Waters and James Cotton and all these bands and thought they were awesome. They would tour with the Rolling Stones. And you look at the Palladia, the concerts, and there are these bands that I've never, that just aren't. I don't want to say anything bad, but I mean, they're not that great. Some of them, some of them are, and some of them aren't. Yeah. They're playing in front of 200,000 people, and then I see a band like Winery Dogs. Why don't you have Winery Dogs at a festival with 200,000 people? I mean, these guys are just off the charts, awesome.
Right.
I can't believe that a young audience wouldn't notice that they were great. But it's just, is it because they're not 25 years old? I mean, it just seems like a weird prerequisite to put on whether music is good or not. I mean, I understand you want it to be of the moment and everything.
Yeah, well, the big companies definitely want to package.
I mean, classic rock, these bands are trying to be classic rock now, so I mean, it's not like it isn't cool,
Well, I mean, that's a great thing about classic rock. You go to a lot of these veteran, heritage acts, their shows, and you see everything from teenagers to old folks and everything in between. There's at least 3 generations represented,
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's great. A lot of the kids are getting into the classic rock, sound through their parents or older siblings and realize like, wow, these guys are a whole lot better than a lot of the stuff that out today and gone tomorrow.
They don't call it classic for nothing, kids.
Yeah. Now, as far as any contemporary music that you do look up to, are there any bands and artists that you're hearing these days that, strike your fancy?
I like Farrell. I mean, I saw him on that's the guy that did that song Happy. Some of the songs in that, like Lose Yourself to Dance. I love old funk. There's a lot of funk in the Lizards, and that's almost as important to me as rock.
Yeah.
And
I see Bernie Worrell on your wish list here on your ultimate.
Yeah. I met him. I was going to make him some clothes, and he kind of disappeared on me. We opened up for I guess Dave Mason was one time, and he was in Dave's band. Cool guy.
Yeah. No, I think the funk and soul is at the root of so much great rock. I mean, you listen to Zeppelin, and you're amazed sometimes at the groove they had. You know,
they were as funky as James Brown. I read a great story where I guess one of their first tours in America that they were on a big festival, and James Brown was there, and the band were all like, his James Brown band were all like circling around Bonham and just watching him in awe. And I said, yeah, that's cool, man. He was funky, definitely. You know.
Yeah. It's an exciting thing. I mean, these days with technology, everybody's trying to record cheap and fast and auto-tune this, and you know they're smoothing out all the edges. You know, that's what we love about a P-Funk or a great soulful band is the rawness.
But you know, I use all that stuff you're talking about there, especially for writing.
Yeah.
And just, I mean, it does save so much time, but I mean, I also sit around and practice all day and make sure that I can get some hot licks down on there. It's not just making up for a lack of effort on the other fronts, you know.
Yeah, well, it's how you use the technology. As long as you're not diluting the creativity, as long as you're accentuating it, that's one thing. But you're seeing a glut of music that's just pouring out these days. It seems like it doesn't have the heart and the soul. You know, that's been taken off.
Yeah, that's. I think behind it all, you should have 3 or 4 musicians who have worked out like a football team together and can deliver some muscle in that department. And then if you want to like save time cutting up arrangements and stuff, you know, but then you learn the arrangements and you can deliver it live, and that's my philosophy anyway. I know it's very old school, but you kind of want some worked out stuff, you know, that you put some time into on the side.
Yeah, well, obviously your drummer, you know, Bobby is played with some big bands, you know, with Rainbow and Sabbath and all that, and you know that there's nothing, you know, that takes away from that experience. You know, working with veteran artists that, you know, have lived this, you know, for years. You know, what is it that you respect most about, you know, Bobby's playing?
You know, I've a couple of times I've sat there with Pat mixing a song, and I point to something Bobby thinks, you're never gonna play with a drummer who can do that. So like just he's got that kind of thing that Bonham and Carmine had, just kind of really sexy, you know, groove to everything he plays. But he's got chops to do, you know, just to blow your mind when he wants to. But as a human being too, he really brought the best out of me over the years. He kind of took an effort to encourage me to play past what I thought I was capable of. So there's a human thing there too that makes me love him, you know, as an artist.
Sure. And how about Patrick? What are you most impressed about him?
Patrick, and I've worked with Patrick on other projects too, and I'm working with him now with my fiance with a band called Joyous, and he's got a great tough guy feel on the guitar. He doesn't have like shred chops, but he's so smart with his melodic choices that you don't notice. Like his leads are so intelligent that I think he stacks up against even the guys with the shred chops. But he's a great songwriter, and he's one of these guys where like I'll come in with a big concept. That's kind of my thing, where I'll have some lyrics and a couple of riffs, and I'll just say, and I'll just kind of imagine this thing, and he'll just make it all happen. He's a studio producer, whiz guy, you know, and he just makes everything come together quickly from an idea, from a germ of an idea, and that's how we've worked together over the years. You know, I think we make a great team, he and I. And he's got the great vocals that he's very happy to be a backup singer instead of a lead singer, and it's just great. He's a team player and a producer. He's got the ears of a producer, great ears.
And how about Mike? Because I know he definitely grew up with all the great blues and R&B artists. You know, what's his strengths?
I've worked with so many great singers, and he's got the best range and just physical ability of his voice, more than anybody I've ever worked with. You know, to hit the hardest notes and to just kind of, he gets it. Whatever you say, do a little Arabic feel on this one, like he does in that song Pleasure Dome, or a whispered kind of sexy thing. He's like an actor. He takes direction really great, and he comes up with great ideas on his own. But yeah, he can deliver almost anything you come up with. He's great, and he strikes a good figure on stage. He's kind of a handsome guy. He looks cool there.
Fantastic. Well, I know on the new LIZARDS album, you're excited about On a Wire and 11. Talk a little bit about those songs and why do you?
Well, those are from our last album.
Okay.
And
talk about the songs from the new album you're most excited about.
I've been listening to it. I noticed the album's kind of dark. There's a lot of dark, kind of foreboding vibes in the song, but I think it's not heavy metal kind of horror movie dark. It's just kind of earthy and good dark, like Kashmir kind of dark,
Yeah.
And I like the song In the Pleasure Dome. I like the first one, Ton on the One, and I don't know. I've been listening to it a lot. I haven't gotten sick of it yet. I think the guest people that we have on the record just sound like they're almost in the band. That fit in very nicely. It doesn't sound awkward putting them into the mix.
Right.
I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
We're getting great reviews. I'm really thrilled. I'm glad we're all still around together.
Well, what can you say about Glenn Hughes? We all know the voice, but the person, behind the voice, he's obviously a survivor. He's been through a lot. What strikes you the most about Glenn?
I've been an avid follower of his since the first Trapeze album. And when he had a down period, I would really, there was no internet, but I would just try hard for people I knew in the industry to find out one little session he might have done as a backup vocal here on Night Ranger, or a couple of songs on a Gary Moore album here, and I'd get all excited, and then he'd kind of drift away again. I think I based a lot of my style around listening to him as a kid, in that he mixed trapeze, kind of mixed James Brown and Black Sabbath or Led Zeppelin together into the same thing. But I think before anybody, I can't think of hearing that kind of two influences mixing together so well before then, that I just really wanted to do something like that. So I kind of studied at the school of Glenn Hughes for most of my life. And when we were touring in Europe, our manager over there knew him and put us together, and he's just the nicest guy. He's humble and encouraging. I mean, when he came over here to write with us, I almost couldn't believe it, how easy to work with he was, and how generous and focused completely on the moment, with us. And I had a song that we worked up on that called it's the big ballad that we do on that album, and I had about 2/3 of it done. And Glenn just immediately sat down and played the next part without even missing a beat, and he was just so quick on it. Take the Fall, that's the song. And we wrote 4 songs with him on that record, and then he wrote another one for us, which we saved for this record. So that's the song Miracle Man that closes off the new album, Reptilicus Maximus. And I let him play bass on that one. I don't do anything on that song. So.
Right. Well, all that you've seen through the years, Randy, I know it's hard to, predict the transitional business areas, but as far as the creative force and commitment it takes these days, what advice do you have to the young bands and young players on what they really need to dedicate themselves and the kind of mindset that's needed?
I think you got to do it because you just kind of have to do it. If you're going to do it because you think you're going to make money at it, or for the idea of making money as your main inspiration, that's not how I work anymore. It's like I just want to be a great artist and be excellent, So that's my drive, and I have my own recording studio, which makes it easier for me. So it's not the money, it's not the money at the end of the rainbow, the gold at the end of the rainbow that it used to be, I guess, unless you're 20, 25 years old, but that, I'm perfectly happy to just try to write beautiful music, and that's what I want to do. As a career move, if it was my kid, I would just say, yeah, it's great, be a musician, maybe do something else too.
Yeah, you definitely want to have a range of skills and talents. You don't want to bank on one horse, but at the same time, there's more opportunities than ever for an independent artist to kind of chart their own course, do this without a record deal, get into film and TV or touring.
Yeah, there's some positives.
Yeah.
I mean, I can, I'm excited about, just the fact that we can, the internet is exciting to me, but I think people read these old stories and I think they're going to be living in a mansion with a Rolls Royce from.
Well, that's always the fantasy,
It really was
TV or BT always showed the cribs and the flash, and everybody thought it was like winning the lottery, getting a record deal, and they later found out no, it's that's where somebody else owns all your work and they tell you what to do, and at the end of the day, it's their call.
I was never my fantasy to make $1 million playing music or to meet girls with music. As a matter of fact, as soon as I started to do music, I stopped thinking about stuff like that because it was just so much work, but it's a happy addiction, It's just it just feels great,
It's the passing of the torch, You obviously were inspired and thrilled by a lot of great music, as we all were, and you hope to not only achieve that great, feeling for yourself, but to hopefully infect others, with a great feeling. And I think that's what music is all about. And I mean, it's obviously been around for thousands of years. I just hope that, technology and creativity can find a balance, because all these tech companies want to use the music, but they don't want to pay for it in the traditional, manner.
People probably didn't make money in the old days much either. Maybe it'll go back to something more honest.
Sure. Well, we're excited about the Lizards' new album. Can't wait to spread the news and hopefully see you guys out here in California soon. And, please keep spreading the word on what you're doing, and we'll pass it along to all the great music fans. Thank you so much for joining us, Randy.
Thank you.